Good evening. Thank you very much. I really want to thank everybody for coming on this budget day. I know there's a temptation sometimes to sort of sit there and maybe perhaps go to a bar and chit-chat and gossip, and I'm really happy for everybody to come to the keynote tonight. First off, I can't tell you, we got protesters tonight. I've been doing this for 4 years. We've gotten our first protesters. I can't tell you how delighted I am. Where have they been for 4 years? There's two of them in the audience. Well, thank you for coming. I think tonight is a very, very important evening, and as soon as I started hearing about what had happened in Caledonia and started talking to Mark Vandermaas, it really, I knew that this was an event that we had to do. I'm also delighted to work with the International Free Press Society. I really want to thank Mary Lou Ambrosio. I want to thank Bjorn Larson for their incredible support for what we're doing. We want to with IFPS Canada. They do a lot of important things. Some of you probably know I started the Free Thinking Film Society in 2007 to sort of counter the onslaught of Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11. That film seemed to be everywhere in Ottawa, and I knew that I had to show other films that countered that, and nobody here in Ottawa would put them on, so I knew I had to show them myself. And so far, we've shown around 17 films. We've brought in speakers like Bruce Bauer, we've brought in Bat Yor, we've had a night on Afghanistan, we've got a lot more coming on. We did a film festival last November, we've got another film festival coming up next November. So let me tell you a bit of what's coming up. In June, we're bringing back Bruce Bauer. Bruce is a gay American who's written 2 books about the problems of radical Islam, and we brought him in 2009 to speak in Ottawa, Toronto, and Quebec City. One of his colleagues is Hege Storhag, who runs Norway's Human Rights Service, and she's an expert on immigration. And so she's just written a new book, Bruce translated it into English, and we're bringing both of them to Ottawa on June 8th to talk about the problems of immigration and what's happening in Europe and sort of what it means for Canada. So I think it's going to be an incredibly important evening. Mark down June 8th. In September, we're going to have a night dedicated to human rights in China. It's about time we touched upon what's happening there. And in October, particularly 2 people in the back, we're bringing in Terry Glavin, who's a writer in Victoria. He's actually a socialist. We're bringing in a socialist who has just written a new book coming out in September about the problems of the left and where the left has gone wrong. So there's nothing like a committed socialist to shine some light into the dark corners of the left. Good. Okay, so here's the schedule for tonight. We're going to be featuring a number of speakers, residents of Caledonia. I'm going to show you several films. All the films that we are showing tonight are on your free DVD, so you can take that home and show your friends. At the end of the presentations, we'll have a limited number of questions, and then we'll go out to a private reception out here, which will last to around 10 o'clock, 10:15. We've got food and drink. One last thing, we are a non-profit corporation, so please buy some of our merchandise. We've got baseball caps, we've got t-shirts, we've got DVDs, we've got Christy Blatchford's book here that's signed. So all the money we make from that goes to fund our upcoming festival. One last thing before I introduce our first speaker, or introduce the speakers. There's been a campaign of intimidation against this evening. So we have retail stores in Ottawa that sell our tickets, and these retailers have received several emails complaining about our event, calling the event racist and put on by neo-Nazis and white supremacists. One vendor, the Ottawa Folklore Centre, decided not to sell any more tickets to all non-musical events. One store, Compact Music, was threatened. So somebody came into their store and actually said, "Are you still selling tickets to this event?" They said yes. They said, "Well, watch your back because a brick might be coming through the window." So we've had a campaign of intimidation against our retailers, which again really is bothersome. It really goes to the heart of free speech. It drives up the cost of holding events like this, and bothers me greatly. Okay, let's get on to the speakers for tonight. In 2006, Gary McHale created CaledoniaWakeUpCall.com in response to the failure of the media to accurately report what was happening in Caledonia. The site now has 14,000 news stories, documents read by well over 1 million visitors, and Gary's been interviewed well over 700 times by journalists across Canada. In 2007, he started Canadian Advocates for Charter Equality to oppose race-based policing in Ontario. Because of that, he's received several death threats, denial of legal counsel, denial of rental accommodations out of fear of reprisal by Aboriginal protesters. And in fact, he spent a night in jail without charge for wanting to raise a Canadian flag, and was later forced to defend himself with Christy Blatchford called a bizarre charge of counseling mischief not committed, which was withdrawn after 2 senior OPP officers were charged with obstructing justice. Christy Blatchford's book, Helpless, which is on sale outside, lays out irrefutable evidence proving the OPP did, in fact, follow racially based orders not to uphold the rule of law in Caledonia. And of course, Christy acknowledges the assistance of Gary and his wife Christine in the making of the book. I also want to say that Gary, despite no legal training, has done incredibly well in the courts. And you'll see from some documents, you'll see from his talk today, he's won several of his court cases. His most notable case resulted in a charge of influencing municipal officials against the former OPP commissioner. Gary attended a Baptist seminary, he's been a deacon of the church, taught in various churches, and his activism in Caledonia, inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King, who himself was a Baptist minister, comes from his deeply held Christian beliefs. I'm really delighted. Just hold your comments until we have, until it's time for questions. Be polite, be polite like everybody else. It's only right. Thank you, Gary, for coming up to Ottawa. Mark Vandermast is a former Canadian soldier and a former UN peacekeeper. After his arrest on December 16, 2006 with Gary, Mark put his career on hold. He was a real estate broker, and now he's a full-time rule of law activist. Who would ever think that we need rule of law activists in Canada? Mark is the leader of the 2007 Ipperwash Papers Project. He's written more than 400 Caledonia-related articles for his blog, voiceofcanada.ca. In 2010, he started the Caledonia Victims Project and began organizing all the evidence that would be needed by people who research the case. And of course, he basically helped Christy with his book and was the co-founder of Helpless by Blatchford. Gary's spoken out on a whole variety of issues related to Aboriginal victims of OPP racial policing, as he did in the 2010 New Directions in Aboriginal Policy Forum at Mount Royal University, and we're delighted that Mark is here to present some stuff tonight. In addition to our featured speakers, we also have several Caledonia residents to talk about what happened to their community. Doug Fleming, Marie Traynor, the former mayor of Haldimand County, Merlin Kinrad, who would like to share a few words with you. Merlin has lived more than 60 years of his life in Caledonia. He's a former member of the Canadian Navy, and his service included a tour of duty in the UN peacekeeping force during the '56 Suez crisis. His long history of contributions to the children of Caledonia and Six Nations through sponsoring sports, coaching, and for the last 4 years, he's worked to end race-based policing in Ontario. In 2009, Merlin's work was recognized by the Caledonia Chamber of Commerce with a nomination for the honor of Citizen of the Year, which said in part, quote, "Merlin's crusade against the injustices here have been relentless. He's been a fervent defender of Caledonia. His compassion and tenacity have stood out during his lifetime. In the last 4 years, those characteristics have been at the forefront for his fight for justice." Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Merlin Kinrad.